are being built. Evidence is collected in relation to a reality. But that reality is a limited reality. When some evidence in support of that reality is collected and formalized, gives rise to a perspective. When additional evidence that support that limited reality is collected and confirmed, the perspective is upgraded to a framework. Once there is adequate evidence and there is a common agreement that limited reality can be explained with the body of evidence, it is then declared as a theory. Theory shows a relationship of constructs in that limited reality. Evidence is collected from the six senses: hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And this evidence becomes the basis to support that reality. When further evidence is collected, one may find that the theory can be branched out to several dimensions. And those dimensions then become the roots to develop individual theory. When a theory is built, a body of evidence is gathered about that limited reality. For example, about a behavior. So that body of evidence then becomes the basis for a theory, but that theory explains about the behavior or limited part of the reality. Theory outlines its scope of application, because that limited reality is bounded by the body of evidence that is collected. This body of evidence that is embedded in the theory and the limited scope of application generates underlying assumptions or facts taken for granted based on the theory. In this instance, it is about behavior. And these underlying assumptions are tested in further research. In this instance, about the behavior, either they are confirmed or findings will lead to improvements, or findings can lead to falsification of those underlying assumptions about the theory, in this instance about the behavior. So the cycle continues with a body of evidence and building a theory with the limited scope of application, generating underlying assumption. Those assumptions are taken for granted and they have been tested for confirmation, falsification, and improvement. Because a theory explains a limited reality, sometimes one theory or an existing theory may be insufficient. It could be that there are compatible underlying assumptions, but a given theory is insufficient to explain that limited reality. In that instance, another theory is brought in to explain the unexplained part or the unexplained limited reality. For example, influence and power has a strong influence on individual decision making. The resource dependence theory can explain, but it explains with the scope of application of that reality. And under the same underlying assumption, institutional theory can explain a limited reality with a scope of application. But that reality is not exactly the same reality that the resource dependence theory explains. The second is the findings can redefine a theory with revised underlying assumptions. For example, agency theory talks about the separation of managers and the owners, and managers become agents for the owners in the functioning of organization. But that is a contractual agreement between the two parties. We can bring in a perspective here that contractual agreement is with a legal perspective. So we redefine the theory with a revised underlying assumption. Third is we are looking at the same phenomenon with two theories, with two different underlying assumptions. So we're looking at a phenomenon, and these two theories are having different underlying assumption that explains the reality. So in fact, the phenomenon we can think is having a reality, and the reality needs an explanation of not a set of assumptions that are made by one theory, but a broader set of assumptions. For example, emotions from economics and psychology theories can be combined with logic from finance theories to explain the same phenomenon, but using two theories with different underlying assumptions. The fourth is underlying assumptions are incompatible. Find that the limited reality that's been explained by the theory is invalid, and new underlying assumptions are required. For example, a theory of contract is offered as an alternate to theory of choice. So the theories can go through transformation. Theories can be brought together to explain phenomena. When we bring theories together to explain a phenomenon, that's called triangulation of theories. And by doing that, we refine, redefine the body of evidence with limited reality, and they are the theories.